I'm going to call the Kennewick County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. First item of business is to stand and say the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we've got a fairly long agenda this morning. First time I think I've ever seen 3 pages, but most of it's dribble. No, we have a good agenda, and thank you all for being here, and for anybody who's watching today, welcome, and appreciate you having an interest in county government. The first thing that we have on our agenda today is our consent agenda. You all received that packet, received the packet, know what's on it. I'm going to pull item E from the consent agenda. That's the county ditch meeting, and we will move that over to about 9:30 when Lorna will be addressing us, and we need to adjourn the county board meeting and meet as the ditch authority. So we'll move that item to the slot for Lorna later in the meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'll move the balance of the consent agenda.
So we have a motion to move the consent agenda from Commissioner Gardner. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, Berg will second it.
Berg seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, general business. The first thing up is, Mr. Odens, you've got 2 items that you will present.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I've got the first item is,
For the public, Mel, would you state your name and?
yep,
your-
I'm Mel Odens, the Public Works Director for Kennewick County. Mr. Chair, the first item that I've got is a final acceptance and authorizing final payment for our edge line striping. It's an HSIP project where we use safety money, federal safety money. It's 90/10 money. And this project is right in the vicinity of $250,000. Just as a reminder to the board, we've been very successful in getting federal money for this. And so we feel good about it. We did about 50 miles this year of striping, and we do that about every year. So we were happy with the project, and this, once again, we groove the edge lines. It's about a depth of 1/4 for the sake of visual, and then it's a wet reflective paint we put in there with a porcelain bead and not a glass bead, so it actually reflects back to you so you can see it when it's wet. So that's the concept. So with that being said, the project was under our contract price by a little over 8%. So it's my recommendation to authorize final payment in the amount of $2,442.68 and accept the project. Authorize final payment to Sir Lines Lot out of Edina and accept the project, Mr. Chair.
You heard the recommendation of staff. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I move that we make the final payment and accept.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves to make final payment for edge striping. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? It's good to have those fresh because
Mr. Chair, a quick question. Has nothing to do with this basically, but a lot of the vehicles nowadays, they have kind of automatic steering with the lines. Does that affect what you do as far as putting the lines down
Well,
and the type of paint or anything?
No, not yet, but that is out there on some of the high volume roads. They are, you know, the line, and I do know that, you know, the mapping, et cetera, on the newer vehicles is that precise, if you will, and it reads the edge lines, and that's why they do the dashes like it ramps.
Okay.
So your car doesn't want to just keep following
That happened.
the road, you know, and so it goes on through. You know, yeah, it's becoming like simple, low-cost, high-impact fixes that they're finding. And then the residual or the secondary impact of that is that you can see it better at night when it's raining. too. And that's usually the worst time on a dark road. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, question? And that was my point, is that when you get a cloudy night, when it's raining, those roads can be so dark you can't see your
Can't
hand
see.
in front of your face, so it's really helpful. But with the technology, I think it's a little like your Roomba. So if you drive from center line to sideline the first couple miles, then your self-directing thing teaches it to just stay inside those lines.
Okay.
Sorry, I digress.
I hope you drive better than my Roomba.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign.
Mr. Chair, the second thing I've got is the final payment and for our crack filling. We were a little over budget because what we've done, or the board has done, is put about $500,000 into crack filling and seal coat. And what we do is we balance that amount. And so the seal coat was about 30,000 under. And so we have a road that had more cracks than as they're going along. So we were about 23,000 over, but the total maintenance, road maintenance of the crack filling and seal coat was under. If that, we tried to balance that amount. So with that being said, we did 37 miles, or a little bit more than 37 miles. And we're happy with the crack filling. Incidentally, next year, we're gonna be going around Green Lake, north of Lake Lillian, the College Road, and from Atwater North is what we're gonna be crack filling next year. But with that being said, it's my recommendation to accept the project and authorize final retainage payment to Aztec Corp. out of St. Cloud in the amount of $2,727.42.
You heard the staff recommendation on a final payment for crack filling. I'd entertain a motion to approve that payment.
I'll move approval.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll move.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any discussion? So I'm guessing we're gonna have some serious cracks to fill next year because of the freeze-thaw cycles. And I'll take this moment to say that even though there's a lot of dollars that are being proposed for infrastructure out of the surplus, the highway user tax distribution formula fund is diminishing. And if we think we have bad roads out here in Kennewick County, try some of the side streets in the metro area. It's amazing. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox about that, but
Oh, yeah, on that note, the state aid account, because of inflation and a few other things is short too. So I mean, we're gonna be feeling it. We're gonna probably need a road and bridge meeting in early March to discuss, a couple things.
all right.
So,
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mel. You need
Thanks, Mel.
All right. Up next, Jenny Lippert is going to present on the Candy Works asset distribution recommendation. Morning, Jenny.
Morning, Jenny.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Jenny Lippert, Health and Human Services Director. So if you recall, back in December, I gave an update to the board notifying you all that we had created a subcommittee to really take a look at how we could best utilize and disperse the remaining assets that the county received from the closure of the Candy Works facility. This group that we had, that was made up of 8 committee members. We had folks that represented different providers within our community, county staff, folks of parents who utilized the Candy Works DT&H program, nonprofits, collaboratives, one commissioner, Mr. Berg, represented, and also myself. Just for a refresher, back on September 15th of 2020, the county board approved the acceptance of the remaining Candy Works assets, and that total dollar amount was $592,235, and it was the county's role to figure out how to best utilize those funds. When the Candy Works Board voted to give Candiwai County those remaining assets, they did leave a suggested list of recommendations as to how those board members felt those dollars would be best utilized and served in Candiwai County. And that document was provided to all of you in your board packet, but I am going to highlight a couple sections of that document. They had suggested that the remaining assets would likely be distributed over multiple years, and that priorities would be set towards some type of wage increases or staff training, giving credit to staff that work with folks with developmental disabilities, enhancements to providers' existing programming and increasing socialization and friendship, assistance to individuals for different equipment enhancements or personal items, respite care. And they did make note that the transferred assets could be given to a foundation that has a working process for grant applications, awards, monitoring for fiscal review and audits. A suggestion from the Candy Works Board at that time was the Willmar Area Community Foundation. So this group of individuals met 5 different times. There was a lot of dialogue, really good conversations. The group looked at the current gaps and needs within the county. What are the gaps currently without that Candy Works facility within our community? And then the group asked Sarah Carlson from the Willmar Area Community Foundation to come to one of our meetings and give us some information as to what would it look like if the group made a recommendation to the board to have some or all of those funds transferred to the Community Foundation. I did provide a little background about the Community Foundation that was provided to you in your board packets. But to summarize, the Community Foundation could receive, again, a portion or all of these funds and would have the ability to create a grant process for local providers or those associated with the developmental disability folks to apply for funds on an annual or biannual basis. The Willmar Area Community staff would assist in devising a plan and establishing the fund itself. We would need to come up with a determination of the length. So how long do we want these funds to be utilized? And then from there, the Community Foundation staff would recommend, like, let's say it's over 10 years, then how many dollars should be expended per year in the annual or biannual grant process. We could create a subcommittee that we could have folks be invested in the creation of setting up that grant process, setting up the criteria, and then also being a part of the review process. So when the grant applications come in, we can identify our own group of folks that would look at those applications and who is eligible to receive those funds. It was discussed at length that there are current needs right now. So the group discussed maybe looking at having a separate discretionary fund set up for individuals within this next year that maybe have current needs, and it would be more beneficial to have them upfront get some funds right away than waiting for an annual or biannual date for when the grant process would open up. So that is something else that the Community Foundation could assist with and create a subset of funds that could be used and not have a specific dollar amount attached to it. The group really felt like the Community Foundation would be a good use, and that would be a nice transfer of these assets for a number of reasons. They are the subject matter experts in this world. They handle a plethora of grants, a lot of dollars. They work with donors, so that was another big thing, is that this fund could actually grow over time. Folks from our community can invest into this program and donate into this fund, which again, it could grow, and we could serve more people for a longer period of time. Also, it's the staff capacity of managing these dollars and creating the oversight and the auditing. I can tell you that Health and Human Services does not have enough staff to be able to select grantees and have the oversight and the follow-up, and that is something that the Community Foundation does and would do if the funds were transferred. And same with Mr. Kleindl, Administrator Kleindl could speak further, but I know the county also does not have those resources to, on a continual basis, be able to have that oversight of these funds to give to providers. The other big thing in discussions was that this would be a fair way to assure that anybody and everybody would have the opportunity to apply for funds with the remaining assets. There was discussion about different providers and more urgent needs and maybe some others, but I think the group really felt that we needed a fair process, that everybody would have the ability to obtain funds if they met criteria. The group put together two options for the board to look at today. Option one is giving the full $592,235 to the Willmar Area Community Foundation, earmarking roughly $150,000 that would be used for next year's discretionary use, and then putting $442,235 into the bigger bucket, which again, the Community Foundation would advise the group as to over how many years and what those grant applications would be, $5,000 a year, $15,000 a year, whatever that would look like. Option two would be to give $300,000 to the Willmar Area Community Foundation, and then keep the remaining $292,235 here at Candiota County and kind of see where things go throughout this next year, and then come back to the board, and if there's any different needs at that time, a new recommendation could be made. Or at that time, if things are going really well with the Community Foundation, we could transfer the remainder of those funds to the Community Foundation at that time. So those are the two options. Again, this group met 5 times. We had a very diverse group of folks that I think we got a nice dialogue, and we had good communication in terms of what the needs and gaps were. And I feel very confident that these two options for your review today are very substantial and good.
Thank you, Ms. Lippert. I'm sure there are a lot of questions by the board. I'll remind you, I think for Commissioner Dale Anderson, for sure, may be hearing this for the first time, and Dwayne,
I have questions, so it'd be nice, if
Okay, so what I'll do now is,
fresh.
is open the floor for questions for Ms. Lippert. I've written down several myself, but you guys may answer them,
Okay,
or
Yep.
yes, the same one. So I'll start with you,
Okay.
Commissioner Dwayne.
all right, so these funds, were they originally from like the recycling center? Is this totally different or how?
Nope, so this is different. Candy Works was a day treatment and rehabilitation program.
Okay.
So somewhat of West Central Industries has a DT&H program, so it was a separate entity.
Okay.
However, since they closed and they had remaining assets, they chose to have the county obtain those, and then they wanted the county again to come up with a recommendation on how these should be used. These are nowhere near Candiota County dollars. The county did not invest any money into Candy Works, nor did we have any routine expenditures going to this program. This was separate funds, but then they chose to have the county take them over to figure out how they could be dispersed after they
Okay,
closed.
so I don't want to be using their, kind of their dollars. It'd be nice to continue it back to them. So if we send it to the like option 1 or option 2, that goes back to help those type of individuals that it was originally helping. So it's kind of a continuation of what was going on.
That's the goal, is many of these folks that went to Candy Works then were able to transfer to West Central Industries. Some now go to the Bethesda Day program. Some just do their own programming. So
And then
there's
these
current
dollars
providers.
the Willmar Area Community Foundation will continue that, helping them. So I don't know, I would rather I mean, I'm not gonna make a motion at this time, but I would rather do option one then, so that we can give it to them, and then we're kind of done with it, so that I don't want in the future where it would be, kind of where we forget about that, and then we keep the money, because that just wouldn't be fair to those individuals. It would be nice to be able to continue helping them if we can, so that's just kind of my opinion, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Berg?
Sure. Just to clarify a couple of different things, and we do have some choices, and we do have option one and option two, but actually, these are just options the committee came up with. As a board, we're responsible for the oversight of these dollars, and these dollars are taxpayers' dollars, which we, as electoral officials, have to oversee. Now, I think there's very little property tax or levy dollars in that, other than time spent by staff. You know, the chairman of the board was Commissioner Mattson, you know, and as well as the treasurer of the Human Services Department in the past. So they were been very involved. So there are some administrative dollars that we do have in there that came from levy dollars, but it's very small. But looking at going forward with this, I initially, and I shared with the committee too, and they know I was going to share with you, I'm a little uncomfortable because traditionally I don't see counties and government giving large amount of dollars to foundations. On the other hand, this is an exception. I know this foundation quite well, and then Sarah maybe has some questions for her, but it's a very well-run foundation, and I know they would do an excellent job at that. And it's a good way to look at some of this stuff. Some of the bigger items that we look at for needs is that we do have the responsibility for oversight, and we do identify, you know, some needs right off the bat as far as West Central CCT transportation. Maybe there might be a need for a van and purchasing a van, and we have a joint powers, and that's really part of the county, from my perspective. Or West Central Industries has a bigger need, and that's a need there as well. Or PAC for Families deals with discretionary dollars, but they would be more earmarked for those individuals with mental health issues and as well as development disability issues. So those are grants I can see that we could, instead of, you know, taking the dollars that we have sitting here in our general fund, because they are in our general fund because they are county dollars. I strongly feel that when we took on these dollars, that we would identify and try to use those in this developmentally disabled area. And I think we should try to honor that. But there are still county dollars there. But and off the top of my head, I'm looking at this like, okay, we have the dollars here. We see some needs there, and we are responsible for the oversight of all these dollars. And that, then I think some of those that we can see right off the bat, why don't we just have them apply for those dollars and give the dollars to them instead of giving the dollars away to a foundation, and then they have to go apply from the foundation again, which is us asking for the dollars back. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to simplify that. But I do recommend, and I would support giving some of these dollars to the foundation to deal with. I think they could do it on the long run a lot better than we could, far as discretionary dollars especially, or some grants that come up. But we deal with grants all the time. And they would be looking at, and that's some questions I have. It's my understanding, I'm just kind of jumping around, but just kind of putting this all together for the board a little bit more, that we could set it up with the foundation that if somebody had a special grant or something really needed, that they could come in off the twice a year type of requests, right? And you want to maybe comment a little bit more about
Sure.
how those would all look?
Yep.
Before you do, I'm going
Okay,
to ask you a
I'm gonna-
clarifying question
Sure.
of you, Commissioner Berg. So when you're saying, you use the example of community transit. So are you saying that if there is a need within community transit, especially to serve the community that we want these dollars to serve, that would be a grant application they could make to the foundation if that's the way we end up going? Or should they make that to the county
Yes.
first before the dollars go, the remaining dollars go to the
Good.
foundation?
It could go either way, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Ms. Lippert?
Couple follow-ups to Commissioner Berg. First off, I think with the group, the question came up on how can we pick and choose? There are many gaps, there are many needs, there's many providers, many different people that have some involvement and work with these folks. And I think that's where the group felt more comfortable of having a fair process that anybody, if CCT was in need for a van, they could put an application in place and they could request $80,000 for a new van that they are going to purchase. No different than West Central Industries. Maybe they want to do a hiring bonus because they're short on staff. They could put that proposal together. It would go to the Community Foundation, our subcommittee of folks that we would identify, subject matter experts in this area, would be able to review that and then again feel confident and comfortable with giving them the dollar. Again, it would be run through the Community Foundation in terms of making sure there's oversight and auditing and making sure that these grantees are following through with what they are putting in place. But that's where we came up with current needs now. And the thought would be creating a separate discretionary fund within the overall dollars. So you'll see in option 1, it's separating out $150,000 for this current year. That $150,000 would have no cap per se on how much somebody could apply for, where those remaining $442,000, the Community Foundation would advise the group on, do you want this grant process? Do you want these dollars to be available for at least 10 years? Then they would give the recommendation on, okay, if you're looking at these dollars to be available for the next 10 years, I think the cap should be $5,000 2 times a year could go out to providers in a grant award. Where those $150,000 of a discretionary pot of money would be available upfront now for anybody that would have needs. They could put in a request at any time. They wouldn't have to wait until a certain grant opening and a deadline of a grant process. They would be able to apply for those dollars upfront. And that's where this group was thinking we could kind of do both things, catch the people that maybe have current needs now and maybe larger needs, but then again, be able to utilize these dollars over time and have the oversight and auditing and administrative work that the Community Foundation already does. I also want to mention that the Central Minnesota Community Foundation has a similar grant process already in place, and it is called the Special Needs grant process, and that is used for individuals that have, I think it's providers and folks that, again, are looking at enhancing equipment needs that directly affect clients and programs or projects that directly affect a client. Those are the focus areas, and that's through the Central Minnesota Community Foundation, and it's called the Central Minnesota Special Needs Grant, and that serves the Stearns County, Benton County, Sherburne County, I believe those areas. So this isn't new to the Community Foundation because there's already something similar in place.
Thank you. My fear is that with every answer, we develop more questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny, I'm reasonably familiar with some of what the foundation does in these funds. The Hawk Creek Animal Shelter, for example, now has a agency fund over there, and that's something that folks can donate to if they want to as part of their estate planning. So this is, presumably this is going to be in some sort of either agency or field of interest fund, whatever is advised, and that will be invested, but it isn't necessarily limited to these dollars. Folks who have a interest in this area could also contribute to this. I would see some sort of an, excuse me, I would see some sort of a leaning towards the option 1, because what I do know of the foundation is that they're exceptionally good at investing these funds. They have some of the highest standards in the entire field of donor advised investment and those types of things. So I think we're on the right path, and I would have the full confidence in the foundation to invest these funds wisely.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Mr. Dale Anderson.
I guess the one thing that, after reading this in preparation of the meeting, was when I was campaigning, I had a number of people that came up with a concern of that the people that worked at the recycling facility don't have any facilities to work at or things to do in the county anymore. So I guess I'm with Dwayne. Them people maybe deserve to have a chance to get some of this money back and use it for things that they can take advantage of in the future. So I totally agree with maybe number one is the way to go.
Commissioner Burke.
It sounds to me like we all are on the same page, and from the point of view that we think this would be a good place to put some of these dollars. And I'm glad to hear that. I think they do a very good job of that. Maybe it's because I'm getting older or whatever, but I'm feeling a little more fiscal conservative about $600,000 that we give that to a foundation, and we have the responsibility for the oversight. Just as you mentioned, Commissioner Gardner, too, you know, the shelter, the animal shelter, that, gee, they help out, so we can give this money to the animal shelter, to them, so they can give it to the animal shelter. Well, I mean, not these dollars, but that's the whole concept, is that we have the responsibility for the oversight. And these are county dollars to be used for the populations that we have in our county. So I think, not knowing that there's a lot of questions, my feeling is that looking at option 2, we get a feeling to see how it goes. We have a report back. If some other needs pop up within that next year, because we're not going to spend all these dollars this first year anyway. So really, all we're doing is having to look at it 1 year from now again. And I just feel that for our responsibility for taxpayer dollars, for the oversight, that we do that, and then we can make a decision. And 1 year from now, we would know a little bit more needs what the county's dollars will be needing.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify, the funds that are placed by the animal shelter are all donations. There's no tax levy dollars that are in that. I just want to make that clear for the folks out there, that these are all dollars that have been invested from donors.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, may I point out, and these are taxpayers' dollars that we're looking at.
And I'm going to clarify that, yes, they are taxpayer dollars. They come from
Federal and state.
federal and state, but they're not levy dollars.
Right.
So I just want people to understand. Administrator Kleindall.
And maybe this question is more for Sarah, but my understanding when I had looked in this stuff in the past, not for the DAC, but if you do it in 2 different funding cycles, there's an extra cost to do that. So you'd be not using the full dollar amounts as wisely as you could, because it's going to cost the fund system more if you do it over in 2 segments versus 1. And that's why from a accounting standpoint, for auditing, monitoring, and getting it out there, this will be the cleanest way. We've been basically waiting for everything to get cleared up with the DAC being dissolved. There's a whole process you had to go through. That this has been a delay, and I don't know if you need to delay it any longer. I mean, you've been on the board, what, 2 years already? So, and it started right when before you started. And so the process has been delayed. It's going to be cheaper if you're going to do it all at once under option 1, and then the process can get going as quickly as possible. So the folks that this money is intended to go to, or the providers, can get there as soon as possible. That's all I'd say.
So I just have one more question. So if we do this where we give it to the William & Community Foundation, it will be set up so that it's in a fund that goes specifically to people with disabilities. It doesn't go to the animal shelter, it goes to that. Okay, because that was one thing I was concerned about. I want it to continue going that way.
Right.
And then from what I'm learning here, we're having this conversation, the money, if we do give it to them, they can invest it. And then maybe it can grow a little bit, where if we keep it into a fund in the county, it probably doesn't get invested other than maybe draws a little interest. Is that at the most? So I don't know. I personally, I prefer option one that way, and then we're done. We don't get accused of taking the money and using it for something other than that. I really want to be able to help the people with disabilities, and I want to make sure that it gets put in the right place. And if we were to keep the money separate and then we start having where people can apply to us for grants, we almost have to start another committee. and right now we have, I don't know, maybe 70 some committees. I really do not want to go there. So,
Well,
So,
Mr. Chair,
one moment, please. I didn't really hear a question, mostly comments from
Yeah.
you, Commissioner.
Yep.
So,
Well, my question was if it does go to the William Area Community Foundation, that it would get. My question was, will it get dedicated, for people with disability, not go towards the animal shelter or?
before I go to
some
you,
other
Commissioner
thing
Berg,
that they
I'll
do?
allow Ms. Lippert to answer that question.
So to answer that question, yes, and we can have our own committee that comes up with the parameters as to who's eligible, what types of projects or requests are eligible for these dollars. And then we also, within that committee and with the help of the Community Foundation, can make sure that we can actually target some of these folks, whether it's, again, the providers or different organizations that work with the developmentally disabled individuals, can target them so we can notify them that in May, this is going to open, get your applications in. The other thing that we're hopeful for is maybe there'll be some innovation that comes from this. Maybe there'll be some really good new ideas that come forward that actually can increase the standard for the workforce and for where these folks live, work, and enjoy leisure activities within our county.
Okay, so there will be assurances and oversight of it. So, okay.
Yes, yep. One, to create the grant process and create that criteria, and then also to be on the review committee to see who's putting in the grant applications, and then we can tier it based off of certain needs. Somebody can rise higher if they put more into workforce, or if they do something with transportation, or whatever that looks like. Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Berg?
when you're talking about oversight, then, are you saying that we would get a report back then annually that Sarah would come back here and give us updates how the dollars were spent? Or,
Yes.
not every dollar, but what was good done with the dollars. So I wanted to know that. There's a couple other issues. I don't want us to get into giving out all these dollars as a county board. We don't want to get, but we are on joint power committees, just like broadband committee or ARPA dollars we deal with. I'm just talking about our committees that we're on. You know, the CCT, I'm on that committee, or the PAC4 for families. They come to us for dollars anyway. You know, so it'd be just part of that regular system we're doing. I don't want to duplicate that work. That's why I'm just thinking, well, they would just come to the board and anyway, for the dollars, why would they have to go there? And then we get a report back, gee, the dollars we gave them there, they got them back. That's really good. It just seems like extra steps to go through. That's all I'm talking about there. We do, Mr. Thompson's here too as well. I have a question. These dollars are invested now, but probably not invested, if I'm correct, if they are, as well as the foundation could do as far as earning dollars.
Your cash. No, it's the DAC funds. Right now, there's in a cash account.
Yeah, they're not.
They aren't invested
Yeah.
alone. They're part of
The-
just our regular pool of investments.
So they are then earning interest.
Yes, they would be.
Okay.
At 1% or
Yeah, it's-
whatever it
I
is.
was gonna say, very little from what I've seen over.
So there was some conversation off camera and off mic, but basically to
Sure.
clarify that there was very minimal amount of investment income coming off these funds.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? So I have a few. One of the questions is how long has it been since this community has been served? Because we've been, and I think somebody said 2 years, so almost 3 years. So the funds have not been utilized for 3 years. That suggests there may be some pent-up demand. But prior to that, what was the kind of annual expenditure for, and maybe there's no history of it, what the annual expenditure of these kind of grant applications might look like?
Mr. Chair, I can, the DAC funds were used for the operation. funds. And so what happened is when they dissolved, the money that was left in their accounts was there, and then they also had an auction off the building and some of those funds. So this was funds from that business assets. And so they weren't divvying out these dollars. These are dollars that they got from what they had in their savings account, whatever, their investments account. And then when they dissolved, they also auctioned off the building in KNUI and then Atwater.
So maybe the more fair question is, what is the anticipated needs? Because where I'm going with this is, and I agree with the comments here about the type of job the foundation does with investments and managing money. I'm struggling a little bit with who's making the grant, the grant committee, because, I mean, well, I'll get to that. But the anticipated needs, would it make more sense to have an endowment where we spend and use the endowed funds to put out grants? Because we don't really know what those deeds are or requests are at this point. So rough numbers, if you had $500,000 at 5%, you get $25,000 a year to put out as an endowed amount for grant applications. Has that been considered, anticipated by the board?
Go ahead. Oh.
You can go ahead, Commissioner Brink, yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
care who answers.
Well, I think that's where we're all on the same page, that we do want to see these dollars used in several different ways, and I think the foundation doing an excellent job about it. And just one more time, I'm just looking at, we're not going to spend all those dollars that first year anyway. And just from a conservative point of view, let's see how this works, and if there's no other needs that pop up that we see from a county's point of view as the oversight for these taxpayers' dollars, that we could continue to fund that program. Because the first year, $300,000 is going to meet a lot of those needs, I'm guessing. And we have a couple options, if I'm correct what Sarah was saying, that generally speaking, your foundation, you look at a 4%. You mentioned 5%, but that's pretty close. But we don't have to stick to that with this amount. We can create that. Yes, we don't have to make this thing last for a lifetime, but we could spend those dollars within 10 years or whatever if we saw a need. Am I correct in that?
I'll let you respond, and then I'll respond to that.
And I would say, I think we would work with the Community Foundation. They work with dollars all the time. They work with needs. They know a lot of needs within our community because they hear it. And I have all the utmost confidence that if the board decides to transfer all or a portion of those funds, then this subcommittee would work with Sarah and her team at the Community Foundation to come up with the best way and how these funds should be used within their options that they have to work with in their portfolio. So that would be, and we could report that back, but that would be my goal as to having this committee made up of stakeholders. I would suggest that it's probably made up of a number of those members that were a part of this group moving forward. Myself to represent Health and Human Services. I would entertain if a commissioner maybe would be appropriate to be a part of that. And then that group works directly with the Community Foundation as to figure out what that looks like and how those funds would be best utilized in the different areas that it can be.
Okay, so there's still a lot of questions here, but I only got to one of mine, so.
Keep going. Good.
So it sort of begs the question for me that $500,000, we're going to spend it out in 8 years, then what? Even if the foundation grows. So to me, I would like to support something that is more sustainable so that it's ongoing. But that, you may have some recommendations in that way. So I'll just put that out there as a comment. You've mentioned several times a committee, and I know that there's not a lot of sentiment for us to have the 27th committee that we have. But have you looked at the grant cycle? Is this going to be a quarterly thing, an annual thing, a semi-annual thing where you have when you say committee, would be a committee to review the applications? Because one thing that I will say is that, I repeat, that the foundation does a fabulous job of investing dollars, but when I look at the board of directors, I don't know that they are one of those stakeholders that you talk about. They may have family members and, I don't know that. But I think the people who been working for the last 2 years, and as you mentioned yourself, and maybe one of the board members, might be wise to be part of the grant review process. So again, that's a comment, but I'm gonna let you reply, and then I'm gonna go back to questions.
So that is the intent of having our own committee. The Community Foundation, they said that we can have our own committee to, one, create this grant process, and two, review the grant applications and be a part of that selection committee as to who gets awarded based on what providers or individuals apply for that grant. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I would anticipate, or my recommendation would be that we have some of those folks that were on this subcommittee made up of providers, people from collaboratives, parents of individuals that utilized CandyWorks or are a part of the developmentally disabled community already, being a part of that. And we would have full ownership of what this looks like, who's selected for those grants, and all of that. The other piece to your follow-up question around getting this to grow over time and not just be done in 10 or 8 years, I think that's where the magic question is: how many dollars would be transferred to the Community Foundation, because that's going to determine then how this grant process is formed and how the length of time of what that would look like. And that's where Sarah Carlson and her team would advise this group. You've got $200,000. If you want it to last 10 years, they would come up with a recommendation. The group did think that maybe twice a year for the grant process would be ideal, giving folks 2 different times throughout the year. That also would be feasible with the Community Foundation and the other grants that they manage. But it also might be a good time, Chair, if I could invite Sarah Carlson to come up and she could give a little overview or answer some of the questions specific to the Community Foundation, or add anything further that might help all of you as well with some additional questions.
And that'd be great, and I'll invite you up. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to ask the questions, and while Ms. Carlson is up here, you can direct the question to who you think is best for answering the question. So I think Commissioner Gardner was next.
Mr. Chair, actually, Jenny just made the ask that I was going to, and now Sarah's standing there.
All right.
And that's what I was going to ask too.
All right, so-
She'll answer our questions, and she does
Dale,
a good
did you-
job.
Yeah.
Commissioner Anderson?
I guess going back to, I understand where Corky's coming from, but yet I also understand the other part. So my question is, how much of an interest difference is there? I mean, interest is getting to be a big issue right now. So as a foundation, can you guys invest that at like 10, 12%, and we're only investing it at 1%? What's the difference? And maybe you can't answer that fully, but just curious.
Good
And
morning.
welcome. Please identify yourself for the people who are listening and watching.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board staff. I'm Sarah Carlson, the Executive Director of the Walmart Area Community Foundation. So to answer your question, Commissioner Anderson, from your lips to God's ears for 10%, please. It all depends on the market.
Is that a question or a request?
Maybe a little both. It all returns on, all depends on how the market conditions are.
Right.
So just to give you a couple of architectural details about how this fund would function. This would be a field of interest fund. So the field of interest would be around folks with special needs. I myself am a special needs and legal guardian parent. And so we would work with these subject matter experts from your team and from the broader community to craft what those parameters look like. We at the Community Foundation grant about $250,000 of our own unrestricted assets back, and one of our priorities is around diverse sectors of our community, including those with developmental disabilities and mental health challenges. And so we are familiar with the needs because the pent-up demand has come to us while they've all been waiting to find out how these resources would be able to be accessed. And it's not an oversight to say that I've been asked probably about half a dozen times every year, do I know where these dollars are and what the plan is? So I do think that people do have some pent-up demand, as the chair mentioned. So it would be a field of interest fund. You would have your own committee. Our staff would sit as members of that committee, usually non-voting, but advisory members of the committee. And then we would select from our pools which pool best meets the risk-reward ratio of both the group and the board itself. And you can give Ms. Lippert and the other staff who would be involved from the executive level some direction on how you'd like that to be handled. But normally, our returns right now are trending between 4 and 6% in a down market cycle. Historically, they've been between 8 and 12%.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bergen.
Ms. Carlson, can you comment a little bit more too, that we're talking about how we could earn money at a better investment, but also by putting the money in there, could you comment how there might be opportunities that additional funds from other places could be added to that, and so it'd be a chance to really enhance our dollars?
Certainly, Commissioner Burke. We work routinely with all professional advisors, attorneys, accountants, financial professionals, sometimes even those involved in the sale of businesses, and often work with donors who have special priorities on how they want their estate to be distributed. Increasingly, we are finding parents who have children with special needs want to do something for the special needs community. And right now, there's not necessarily a clean vehicle for that to happen. This would be one of the ways that a direct bequest, an estate distribution, or even annual distributions from IRAs called Qualified Charitable Distributions, QCDs, could be directed to the fund. The foundation would receipt those assets, we would permanently own those assets, and they would be available at the direction of the committee within the parameters that are set up to do so. So yes, that is a possibility. And in your packets, I believe you received the year at a glance about the foundation. So you saw the 150 plus funds that we manage inside our $30 million here in Wilmer alone. And when we work with those professional advisors, those field of interest funds and agency funds are the first ones we talk with their clients about, because we have some certainty about how those assets are managed and the fact that they would be used for good in Candy-Ojai County. So I do think that will happen over time. It may not happen immediately, but I do think it will happen over time, yes. And back to a question that Mr. Chair asked about endowment or regular funds. What we are really recommending at the foundation is a more blended approach. So we're saying hold some of those assets as more liquid. They would not be invested. That first $150,000 would be kept in a sub-fund underneath your original fund. Those probably would be kept out of investment so that we can grant those out as immediately as the committee feels necessary. And if we don't need them immediately or in sum total, they could be held that way or rolled into the regular fund. We could also take the assets and look at a blended approach, some being endowed so to start to create that permanent stream, and then some that would stay in a grant-making arena. The grant-making and endowed funds would be invested. That would be our best recommendation.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sarah, could you just speak then to the other part of that equation, which is the fee structure, which is quite favorable to any of the funds that are invested within the foundation?
Certainly, Commissioner Gardner, thank you. We, part of our business model actually is charging fund fees to the funds that we manage. However, we don't do that to get rich. The Community Foundation in Wilmer has had an advantageous position over the last 10 years that I have been in the foundation, because we do have a significant endowment of our own that underwrites a lot of the operations. So we can have a pretty advantageous fee structure. This fund would be about 1.5% is what we would charge for the management. That includes audit, all financials, the staff time, that kind of thing. There would be an upfront fee to set up the more intensive period around granting and doing some of that. That fee will be dependent on how many assets come over and what you tell us you'd like to do. But it will be generous. The foundation is not intending to make money off of this. We just need to cover our costs. And then we also have a management fee for investment assets that get paid directly to the Central Minnesota professional advisors that manage and invest the funds on your behalf. So those dollars all stay here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Can I ask, maybe it's a question for Jenny, or it could be Sarah, I'm not sure, because the $150,000, I'm guessing is not an arbitrary amount of money that you just said of the 600,000, we'll just take that amount. Can you tell me how you arrived at that?
Sure. So the group actually asked some providers to come in and speak to us. And also transportation was a high need and affects a lot of folks in this area. So we also invited Central Community Transit to come in and do a little presentation. And I think hearing from those folks, 150,000 kind of came to mind in terms of maybe somebody would apply for 30,000. Maybe somebody will apply for 20. We didn't really know. So that was just, again, kind of a ballpark number that the group kind of felt confident about. Large enough money for 1 year, but also not a lot of money either to keep kind of some parameters still around how those discretionary funds would be used.
All right, thank you. So there's a number of questions that, I mean, I can tell by the questions that are being asked here today that there are still questions that we will have tonight. And I'm going to suggest that we table this action, time certain till the March, 1st of March meeting. It's been 3 years that we've been working on it, another 30 days. I don't think we'll make a big impact on the ultimate decision, unless the stock market, skyrockets in the next 2 weeks. But I just feel very uncomfortable with all the information we've received today. For Commissioner Anderson, Dale Anderson really new. For us, we haven't heard it for a while, that there's too many questions to act on this today. But if you wish to do it, that's up to you.
Mr. Chair.
I have more questions.
Mr. Chair, yeah. I am comfortable with using the foundation. My concern was, why don't we just see how it works? And since it's we haven't done anything like this on this scope before ever. So I don't think we have, as a county, invested this kind of dollars into a foundation. So I was thinking half would be a good start, and to see how that goes and feel more comfortable in that. But I'm comfortable in moving forward and giving them something. But my preference would be just let's give them half and then see how that goes and get a report back and feeling I'm fulfilling my responsibilities, providing oversight.
If I may
Being fiscal.
If I may respond to that, I understand
Sure.
that concern.
No.
I share
Yeah.
some of it with you. When I read the statement here about the board of directors and staff, it says the foundation governs the foundation, sets priorities, and makes all final grant decisions. I guess I'd be more comfortable putting all that money in at one time, but having a grant review board that would include the committee that you're talking about, which would include at least one of us commissioners, probably just one of us, so that your concerns would then, in my mind, maybe I'm missing something, but in my mind, your concerns about seeing how it goes would be addressed, because we've got a committee that is, looking at the grant application process.
But, Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I just don't really want to create another committee if possible for the board anyway, at this point. I mean, we don't want to micromanage this neither at all, but I understand what you're saying, because our responsibility with our joint powers, we give out these dollars, we have that responsibility, so.
The reason, Commissioner Berg, I asked the question earlier about the number of grant cycles would be in a year is for that very reason.
Sure.
We don't need a monthly meeting to go to, and
Sure.
certainly not all 5 of us, plus staff. So I think a couple a year would be not that great of a burden. And it would give us comfort knowing that we're
Sure.
serving who we really want to serve. I think I saw Commissioner Berg's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what you just said about the oversight, and I would be willing to move the recommendation for option 1 with those oversight parameters and us having a presence on that committee. And I guess if I'm making the motion, I'd make myself available to do that as well, unless someone else, Commissioner Berg or whomever, wanted to do that. But that would be my motion to move the option number 1 and invest give 100% of the funds over now to the Wilmer Area Community Foundation.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept option one. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Burke.
I just would like to add that I feel comfortable with either motion, either options we're looking at. So I certainly would support that as well.
All right, any other discussion? My only concern is that we raise a lot of questions. I feel like we would all benefit from having some time to reflect more on this. Perhaps the staff can come back to us next time, because for me, the question about spending it down in 5, 6, 10 years, whatever, or using it as an endowment, to me, that question hasn't really been resolved.
I just have one comment. I think, we do have to have a leap of faith and trust them, but at the same time, I think if we didn't trust the Wilmer Area Community Foundation, we wouldn't give them a penny. So I think they'll do a good job. I have great faith in them, and I think they'll do good. And since hopefully they'll set up a committee. I just don't want to be on another committee, but not that I don't want to be on your committee. It's just that I got a lot of them, and we all do. But if you guys set it up where you have people that have more knowledge than me, certainly about individuals with developmentally disabled individuals, I would feel very comfortable of letting you guys be in charge of that.
So my point is, we don't necessarily, it's not a matter of trust of how they handle the fund.
Yeah,
It's a matter of endowment or not an endowment. Who has the final say, so who doesn't have the final say?
My point is just that I don't have experience in this, and I would rather have them be in charge where they have a little more knowledge than me, and I don't want to get into the business of micromanaging, because it was given to us by the Candy Works, and a lot of people are concerned that we will take that money and use it elsewhere, and I just don't want to get in that situation.
And I think by the direction this discussion has been going for the last 45 minutes, it's clear we all feel that way, and that's why we're investing the time and the questions in what we're doing. So I hope there is no other perception than that we're looking out for the best interests of those who these dollars were meant to serve. Did you have a question, or Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Sarah, can you speak to the difference between the proposed fund and an endowment, how those structures differ?
Certainly. So an endowment, when the assets come over, let's use that $500,000 number. If we endow that entire amount, you can only spend interest. Normally, it is 4% is our standard policy, but we could entertain a motion to do a 5%, a more aggressive payout of those assets. So an endowment, if you do magic endowment math, it should always grow at the same time as it is granting. So $500,000 the first year, maybe we have favorable returns, it becomes $505,000 next year, and it's granted out $5,000. The next year we have $505,000 that we pull 5% from. We grant that 5% out, and whatever is remained, let's say there's 3%, that stays in the fund and the fund grows. So that's how an endowment works. It is permanently restricted and it can never be spent. So Mr. Chair, IMDEC's idea is not a bad one for us to explore the idea of what does a blended fund look like. Cash reserve to do immediate impact, a grant round twice a year that we would ideally supplement around the WACF grant round where we already accept special needs proposals. So technically 3 times a year, they would have access to some assets if we do it right. And then that a smaller percentage would be endowed to permanently put a feeder back into that grant pool. That is possible. It is possible even if you choose to trust us. Thank you with that, by the way. trust us to do that, that we could help design that, and Jenny could certainly bring it back to you as a point of report to say this is how that's been decided, or what the recommendation is before we actually invest any of those assets. It'll take us about 6 months to get the first grant round ready, however. So in the era of transparency, we would probably be fall before we would be ready to do a grant round.
Even if we have the $150,000 that we would keep back out of that?
That is checkbook money. It
Okay,
is
so
essentially available.
essentially,
immediately.
we could open up the grants tomorrow with those dollars.
Well, once the money is at the foundation, you sure can.
But what I'm saying is that I understand that the endowed part of it takes some time, but in the meantime, we'd have checkbook dollars to work with.
Yep, 3 funding streams if we're talking about bringing endowment in. Checkbook money, that immediate impact dollars, uninvested, available 365 days a year hypothetically. Grant round dollars, first round would probably be fall, and we would determine with the committee kind of what we think, as Jenny's mentioned several times, how long we want the bulk of the assets to last, and what is the parameter there, and then the endowment, which would need to grow a little bit. Our minimum endowment is $50,000. That's not going to get you very far, very fast at the level you're talking about. So I do think we'd want to look at an endowment a little bit larger, but we haven't done endowment math for you because at this point, we weren't talking about an endowment being part of the plan.
And if I may follow up, Sarah, would it be fair to say that under an endowment structure, any more immediate impacts over the next 8, 10 years, whatever it is, are going to be quite a bit smaller because you don't have that principal available?
Correct.
And so if we're going to make an impact, a meaningful impact for this community, then we would want to consider the fund type that you're recommending.
Yes. So we would do, if you do elect to direct the committee to establish or at least investigate an endowment component, that would be a separate fund. We would separately open your endowment fund. It would be governed under a separate fund agreement, subject to the same committee recommendations, but it would only flow over to essentially the grant-making pool. That's what would happen. The payout on that fund would go to the grant-making pool, and then that committee is responsible for its distribution, just like it would if it had been flexible money.
So if I call for the vote on this motion, are we clear on what we are approving? Because there was a lot of unanswered, there is a lot of remaining unanswered questions, and do we go ahead and vote and with the confidence that they will answer those questions and do it in the fashion that we seem to have communicated? Then I will call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hold same sign. Motion carries. Thank you guys for your time and patience.
Thank you.
I think we need a little bit of a break here. That was kind of, we'll recess for 5
All
minutes.
right.
We will resume the Kennesaw County Board of Commission, and at this time, I'm going to recess the Board of Commission as the Board of Commission and open up as the County Drainage Authority. So we are in recess.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you for your time. I'm Lauren Ingleby, the County Drainage Department Manager, Drainage Systems Manager, and I have 3 action items for you today. And we can start with the minutes of the County Ditch 46 hearing that we had.
Thank you, Lauren. You received the minutes in your packet, and they need to be approved, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Drainage Authority.
I so move, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Berg moves.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
may proceed.
The second item I have before you today is the Rinke Noonan Law Firm retainer and updated hourly rates. And if, I would recommend that we do keep Rinke Noonan on retainer for drainage issues. It's worked very, very well in the past few years. The retainer is $200 per month, and that basically allows me unlimited phone call and email, and also you as well as Drainage Authority members. And so I would like to continue with the retainer. The other page in your packet is dated November 23rd of ’22, and that's when Rinke Noonan sent us the new rates for the calendar year 2023 for them based on the time that their senior attorneys, the associate attorneys, and others within their office. The rates did go up. I don't have the 2022 ones, but in your packet, the 2021 rates were in there. They have gone up like everything else. So the new rates are on the sheet dated November 23rd, 2022.
So you heard the recommendation from Lauren?
I just, have you ever looked at any other law firms at all or not? Because these rates are going up pretty significant. So I was just, my question was about that. So.
Commissioner Anderson, that's a good question. I have not. If you would like me to, I certainly can.
Okay. I think maybe in the future, I'm fine with them for this year or whatever, but maybe just to kind of get another look at it, maybe if there's any others out there, I don't know. I know at our conferences, they're the only ones that seem to be there for an option, but when they're going up this high, I don't want it to keep going up.
Keep everybody fair.
Yep.
Makes sense. Sure. I can sure do that.
Any other? Commissioner Berg?
Just a couple of questions, and then to approve this, if we so move to do that, before looking at was in our record here, there was an option 1 or option 2, a monthly retainer plus hourly fees versus option 2, hourly services. You're talking about doing the monthly retainer and hourly services
That is
type
correct.
of option. So that would be the motion that you're recommending as well.
That is correct. Yes.
I so move for that option and approve moving ahead with Ricky Newman's.
So let me be clear, you're making motioning for the staff recommendation.
Yes.
And choosing an option, is that what you had hoped we'd do?
Or just clarifying it.
That's clarification. That is what I'm recommending
Okay.
is option 1.
Okay.
Yes. That's
All
correct.
right, so you heard, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner, was that you? Okay.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? I will only say this, Kurt Dieter, if you're listening, you retired. The prices should have gone down when the highest price. I know Kurt well. I'm having fun with him. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other business to come before the Drainage Authority?
Yes. The primary reason is to review the drainage repair liens, the levy proposal that I've put together for payable 2023. Each year, this time of year, I bring to you a proposal for each ditch system, that the financial needs that each ditch system needs. This year, I have before you 61 out of the 74 drainage systems that we have do need funds, and I have a levy proposal for each one of those. Keep in mind that each one of these ditch systems is owned by the property owners who are currently assigned a benefit. 100% of the funds that it takes to maintain that ditch system comes from those property owners who currently are assigned a drainage benefit. No funds for drainage systems come out of the general fund or any other source, so that's important to know. County Ditch 8, for example, is paid for only by those people on County Ditch 8. Okay?
Thank you, Lauren. That's a very important distinction because some people will see that and think that as a taxpayer in the county, they're a part of this. But this is the system. Lauren's office manages these ditch systems and the funds for it. And I'll also mention that looking at the auditors across the room, oftentimes our state, when we get our state audit, they comment on the fact that our ditches are not funded properly. And Lauren's been working real hard for, 6 or 7 years now to rectify that and get a fund balance in those ditches. I'll also comment, if I may, there's a couple of quite high ones of percentage increases, 27%, 20. Those are relatively, with the exception of one, those are relatively really small drainage systems. So 27%, for example, of $2,000 or $11,000 is a pretty small amount.
Correct. And I do have a couple here that I'd like to point out that are different than years past. And that's why I gave you in your packet the ditch repair lien history. Gives you an idea of what we've done in the past 5 years in terms of a levy. On the proposal, I did put the general location where these are so you can get a feel for if they're in your district or where they are relating to your district. Several considerations go into coming up with the amount of levy. The year-end balance I get from the auditor's office, I subtract what we project on spending, and that's based on projects that didn't get done in 2022, and that's projects that are on the books right now. And some systems are pretty quiet. We don't really spend a whole lot of money on some of these systems, but some every year we'll spend $10, $20, $30, $50,000. So I know that from history, and I want to make sure that we collect all or part of that so we're prepared to pay the bill and not go in the hole for that ditch system. And it's worked out very, very well. And even talking to some of the property owners, they've agreed that that's a good way of doing it. Most would rather pay, for example, $500 a year rather than every 10 years a $5,000 or a bigger. So a little bit at a time is kind of my feel. Retainer fees go into the levy proposal. My wages, based on the amount of hours per year, last year, go into that ditch system. Anticipated costs, and one of the things that's a little challenging on the joint ditch systems is knowing what our share of each of the surrounding counties are going to have for expenses. I'm in close contact with those folks, so I have a pretty good handle, but in the past 2 years, Meeker County has been much more aggressive in maintaining their systems, same with Renville. Chippewa and Swift have been that way too. So we communicate, we know what our share is, and I can plan accordingly, and it's worked out quite well. So, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that some of these are fairly large. For 27% on $11,000 benefit, the percentage is high, yes, and that will raise $3,148. That's a fairly small system. It's a very old system and an old tile system that does need a little bit of repair. There's not very many people on it, and so I don't try and cushion that one quite as much as I do the large systems. The one, County Ditch 48, for example, was constructed in 1919. It's all tile, it's all clay tile, and we've not levied a whole lot of money against that system historically, but last year we had a major tile repair. So that's why we need almost $29,000. So that I might expect some phone calls from those property owners wondering where that money went. So that's needed to bring that system out of the hole. JD1, a big portion of that was, I believe, Renville County's, our share of Renville County's expenses. We also had significant expenses, but even at 0.6% raises $272,000. The total benefits is $45 million. So we have to look at it proportionately. That's a lot of money. I don't think I shouldn't say, it's not a catastrophic expense for those folks. JD2, a lot of money spent in Renville County on that one. The RK means Renville and Candy, Ojai. State Ditch 1, backing up a little bit, there's some tree removal planned for that one, so that's why that one's a little bit high. JD 16 also, Renville County spent a lot of money. Our share was significant. The one I wanted to talk to you about was JD 18 SWKNC. That's Swift, Candy, Ojai, and Chippewa. That's Shakopee Creek. There was a major repair in Swift County, and the water control structure that's owned by the ditch system on Shakopee Lake was replaced. Those two projects alone were $1.2 million. Our share, our property owner's share, was $170,000, I believe. So my proposal on that is to split that out over 2 years, let the Fund 14 or the ditch fund carry the remainder. I didn't want to go more than 2 because then we'd want to file a lien, but this way, let's just carry it. I was concerned about how that might hit some of the property owners. The people right on Shakopee Creek are paying the lion's share percentage-wise of our share. So I wrote those folks a letter and said, if I take this proposal to the board, this is what it means to you exactly for payable 2023 and 2024, and that is what you paid in 2022 will be double in 2023 and again in 2024. Are you comfortable with that? Give me a call, let's talk about it. If you want us to do something different, that's what I want to hear. But I got one phone call. He had land in the perpetual conservation easement, so he was wondering how that worked. I didn't get any other phone calls, so I'm assuming then that if people looked into that, they were going to be okay with the assessment. I don't want surprises. I don't want big surprises, financial surprises in that regard. So I'm comfortable with that.
Lauren, I appreciate you reaching out to those folks and getting that ahead of time and being clear with them. Commissioner Dwayne Anderson has issued to ask.
So just for clarification, the amount you want to bring in or is the column on the right, the amount raised is going to be what you're proposing to raise?
Correct.
Okay. And then the other question would be, so Rinky Noonan, because we retain them and you have a call on a certain ditch, that gets charged to that certain ditch then, right? If there's a bill? Or is it, it's not put on the county dollars, it's put on the ditch system, right?
Correct. That is correct. So
Okay.
the $200 per month
Yep.
is split out among all the ditch systems.
Okay.
Proportionate to how many hours I spend on each of those ditch systems.
Okay.
That's how I set the formula up.
Okay.
So each ditch system pays a little bit
All right.
of
Thank
that
you.
retainer fee. If there's a need to have Rinky Noonan pursue something on a specific ditch system, then that ditch system pays their hourly rate and,
Okay.
yep. So that's how.
That's I thought I understood it like that, and now I just wanted to make sure that it was
Yep.
correct how I
Yep.
understood it.
Good.
So.
Good. The rest of them, pretty self-explanatory. 1.457 million, which we range from 800,000, I think, to 1.8 or something in the past. But yeah, I'm confident and comfortable with this proposal as I'm presenting to you. We can certainly make changes as you see fit. If you hear from constituents that we need to, Otherwise, this is the proposal I would ask for your action and approval on.
So you heard staff recommendations to the Drainage Authority regarding the ditch liens payable in 2023. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we go with the county drainage inspector's proposal.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson
that.
moves on the request.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any other discussion or questions? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lauren, you'd mentioned that the neighboring counties, whom we partner with on these other ditches, are being a little more, I think your term was aggressive in pursuing repairs. Does this amount say that we're following that same trend? And perhaps we can expect this to continue for at least some time?
That is correct, Commissioner Gardner, and as a matter of fact, I've been here 17 years, and until the last 2 or 3 years, other counties would call me and say, "What kind of expenses did you have this year, Lauren?" Because we always, we need to plan. It seems as though we've been a little bit more proactive, but the other counties are really becoming proactive like we've been, and I think it's about the same across the county lines. So these things need to be fixed. They're well over 100 years old in some cases, and they're showing their age, like I am.
Any other questions?
It sounds prudent to me. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
All right, then I will call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you much, Lauren.
I have,
Go ahead.
sorry, I have one more bit, a couple pieces of information, just as FYI. It's not in your packet, but I put together an updated list of the Joint Ditch Authority members, so you can see which joint system you're on based on your district, and then the other commissioners of the other counties, who they are. And then the second one is the surrounding counties that we do have, the 6 county that we have surrounding us, and all the commissioners for those districts. I thought that might be interesting to you, and I just want to pass these out. This is just for your information.
Certainly. While you do that, I'm going to adjourn the Kennewick County Drainage Authority and reconvene the Kennewick County Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you, Lauren.
Mr. Chair, Larry Kleinel, Kennewick County Administrator. I received a letter from Dan Coughlin, who's the District Administrator for Middle Fork Crow River Watershed District, notifying us that they have been informed that Watershed Manager Kelsey Olson will not be seeking another appointment to the Middle Fork Crow River, and therefore we'll need to replace that position. So I'm asking for permission from the county board to advertise with a public notice of the open manager position, with the appointment being determined at the March 7th meeting. Basically, we'll put it in our newspaper that an appointment for a manager position for the Middle Fork Crow River Watershed District shall be considered by the Kennewick County Board on March 7th, 2023. Persons that are interested in being appointed to serve as a watershed district manager may submit their names in writing to the Kennewick County Board of Commissioners and send it to the Administrator's Office at 2200 23rd Street Northeast, Suite 2020, and by noon of March 2nd. And so I would ask those who are watching that are interested in applying, also for the board's sake, to provide a little background information about yourself. And it gives the board information that helps them understand who's applying. And so that's my ask, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I would add to that if you have any questions about what a watershed manager does, please reach out to Dan at the Middle Fork Watershed District.
Correct.
To see what the commitment is involved. I've attended those meetings for years. It's not overbearing, and if you have an interest in water and water quality, this would be a nice place for you. The request is we need a motion to allow the administrator to post this position?
Also move.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Public Works Director Mel Odens. You're going to have a resolution for us to consider.
Yep, Mr. Chair, Mel Odens, Public Works Director. In front of you is our resolution for our annual bridge replacement program. This resolution is required by the state to get town bridge, state aid money, or federal aid money. And so we've done this every year. This year, we have a total need of $1.15 million in a matching amount. What we would be asking would be $780,000. It's an 80-20 match for the most part. So with that, it's my recommendation to approve the resolution 2023-6.
So you heard the recommendation from staff. How do you wish to move?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass Resolution 2023-6.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we'll try to gain a little ground here. Gary Gear with the Environmental Services.
Morning, Gary.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Gary Gear, Canada County Environmental Services Director, presenting an amendment to our waste delivery agreement with West Central Sanitation. What is in your packets is based off of our review, staff review through our 10-year solid waste plan amendment that we have to follow and redraft, which will be coming to the board in April, I believe. But in doing that, and then in conjunction with reviewing with West Central Sanitation, their collection and delivery records, we recognized that there was some of our Canada County generated waste that was leaving the county, and we were wanting to capture that and account for that at the landfill and then in our 10-year solid waste plan. So that is the basis for the reason, I guess, for the proposed amendment to the agreement. It would be upping it 1,000 tons to 25,150, and then monthly tonnages based on the other agreement language that they stay within 2% monthly and 5% monthly and 2% annually. So I say all that, and then I have one quick change to the numbers as well. Yesterday, I was made aware from West Central Sanitation that they have just recently, on Friday, acquired Matthias and Disposal out of Benson, Minnesota, and historically, they have averaged about 220 tons per year. They have a small collection route kind of on the westerly edge of Candiac County, so I was wanting to incorporate that number into this 25,150, so officially I'd be recommending 25,370, and then slightly adjusting the proposed monthly totals too. It'd be 22 tons in January and 18 tons per month the following February through December to make us whole with Candiac County collected municipal solid waste that West Central is generating. So I think that's it.
So you heard a recommendation for Mr. Gear.
I so move to accept this recommendation with additional changes that were made at the last minute.
Essentially, what we're recommending is an amendment to the agreement. Do I
Yes.
hear a second?
Yes.
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any questions or comments? I had a question since the last meeting about, so now West Central is acquiring a business out of Benson. And is this waste being generated in Swift County or Candiac County?
In Candiac County.
Okay, so if it would have been generated in Swift County, would the rates have been the same for that as it would have been for?
It would not. They pay a higher rate, much significantly higher rate at the landfill if it's out of county waste.
That was the crux of the question, is that do counties bringing waste to us pay the same rate that we as taxpayers pay?
Significantly higher, and that was in 2017, the fee structure that change that we made, then we basically have eliminated out of county waste. And I think that's the long-term goal of that change was to do that.
Yep. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Gary.
Okay,
You have a new one to sign then?
I do.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson, our auditor, or no, wait. you're-
I have one more item.
Sorry, sorry.
That's all right.
Ahead of myself.
So the next item I have is the possible sale of the recycling center. Again, we did run one advertising round in December, and the bid opening did not receive any bids. We had talked at that time of possibly doing it again in the spring. Right now, I've been visiting with a business owner in Wilmer, and he's wanting to submit a bid. And so I brought it back a little sooner to you to, again, request approval to move forward with the sale of the recycling center building. So, and what I'm asking, and I had been visiting with Mr. Odens and Mr. Baker as well, just regarding the possibility, like they are looking into for the Wilmer Y project land that was left over, is to possibly have a live or online auction as well. So we have to do the 3 weeks of advertising, so that's kind of what I'm asking for today. And if we have a bid opening and the board chooses to sell, it would end there. But just to get us thinking, the possibility of an online and live auction as well could happen after the 3 weeks.
So your request today is to advertise
For 3 weeks.
Correct.
Do I hear a motion?
So I got a question. So you're not going to do the live auction or online auction, or?
I think that decision we would make likely, well, if we approve a motion to advertise for bids, we would advertise on February 11th, 18th, and 25th, and then I would come back to the board for a bid opening on the March 7th meeting date. If it was unsuccessful, then we could make the decision to move forward with an online auction.
I see.
In other words, if I'm understanding it, Mr. Gear, is if we get a bid that we're satisfied with and accept, then we wouldn't have the live auction.
Correct.
So we can turn down the bid if we don't like it?
Yeah,
Correct.
I mean,
Okay, all right.
Yes,
Okay.
There's no minimum set on this bid, correct?
correct.
I so move, we resubmit this for bids.
Advertising.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. I didn't mean to rush you out the door, but yeah, you can leave it.
Would
You
you like
want
anything
want
to
me to
sign?
sign it right now, or?
If you would, yes.
And while you do that, Mr. Thompson will make his way up to.
How far did you run this morning? Oh, an easy for you.
Was it hot?
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Lot nicer than about a week or so ago.
You got a little bit of a sunburn.
No comment.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman of the Board, Mark Thompson, Auditor Treasurer. First thing I have on my agenda, or on the agenda, is the gravel tax report. I think you all have a copy of that report. You should have had that. It's more for information, but at the same time, I would request a motion at the end to approve dispersing of funds as laid out. So the total amount of the gravel tax for 2022 is $163,440.39. A couple different reports that you should have. It shows the haulers and how much they paid for yards. Again, we charge 21.5 cents a yard and 15 cents per ton. Some choose to report by yards hauled, some choose to report by tonnage. And then there's a breakdown as far as the distribution, what we collected from those haulers. And as you can see, 5% goes to the auditor's office, the administrative fee that we get. So if you take the $163,440, take off 5%, you're left with $155,268. Of that, 42.5% goes to the township where those pits were located. and you can see which townships are getting paid. And then the Road and Bridge Fund gets 42.5% also. And then 15% is put into a reserve fund. And that totals up to $163,000. So we have $23,290.25 going into the reserve fund. As far as the Road and Bridge Fund, that would be a question for Mel, what those funds will be used for in the future. So the grand total of the reserve fund balance over the years, with the additional $23,290.25, that grand total comes to $291,992.70. And those are dollars that Mel and the board would determine how to spend.
So I got a question.
Yep, go ahead, Commissioner Anderson.
Okay, so I was writing this down. You said 42% goes to the townships where the gravel is taken from, right?
Yep.
And then 42% goes to Road and Bridge Fund. And then how much goes to reserve was that?
15.
15%.
Yep.
Okay.
And just to be clear, that's after the administrative fee is taken
Yeah.
off the top.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, you said it goes into a special reserve fund, but it goes into the define the special reserve fund then.
Well, it's just it's a gravel tax reserve fund that's set aside.
But it's still part of the general reserve.
Yeah, and it's up
That's what I
to
thought.
the board and Mel to ensure the way that would work. And Mel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you'd make recommendations to the board how to use that, and it would be your choice how to spend it. At some
I see
future
it's on
point.
here, so sorry.
Yeah, I'd entertain a motion. First of all, I have a question, but I'd entertain a motion to accept this recommendation.
Disbursement, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson second. I'm going to ask this question, and whomever wants to answer it. So we got $200 and some $1,000. I think it was 292. Or is it 192?
292.
In this,
291. Yeah,
typically, what would those funds be used for? And Mr. Odens, maybe?
Mr. Chair, we would use those for restoring a gravel pit that we might have inherited that wasn't up to our standards. The money that you see in here that goes to the Road and Bridge Fund, we use as a revenue source for our crack filling project. So we did a 5-year makeup of about $200,000 to $300,000, and then we want to settle in and just use the gravel tax as the revenue to fund our crack filling. So it goes right into maintenance. That the theory is the gravel you take out of a gravel pit probably does some road damage, if you will, and so we want to turn it right back into road maintenance versus just some large 10 million slush fund.
And so Road and Bridge is sort of an umbrella, because we don't really build bridges or replace culverts with those funds.
That's correct. The reserve fund would be more for like old gravel pit restoration, reclamation. Is the reserve fund, the part that goes into Road and Bridge would be used, we use that for our annual crack filling and seal coat.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions or comments?
Good questions.
Then I will call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mark. You may proceed with the financial statement.
Okay. We just received some information this morning that I'm going to hand out. I know it's really short notice, but at least you can maybe follow along.
I have one.
Thank you.
Mark, you have some for the media? Extra copies?
I can share here with.
I can go make copies.
So, in your packet, you should have received a copy of an email that I received from the Minnesota State Auditors, who have been doing our audit ever since I've been here, so that's been 18 years. So I'm sure 20 plus years they've been doing our audit, financial statement audit. Well, 1 week ago, I should maybe back up a little bit. We've had some conversations the last year or two, where they've had some changes happening at the state, and they've kind of been backing off And we kind of sensed they were thinking about getting out of doing our audit, not only ours, but other counties that they've done. If it's because of staff shortage, that's kind of what they've told us. But we still, anyway, I was under the opinion that, or my opinion was that they still were committed to doing our 2022 audit. We just finished up the 2021 audit, and that was late. We know that, and again, it was because of staff shortages on the state side. Now, year 2022 is over with, and again, like I was saying, we kind of assumed, never assumed, we kind of assumed that they would still be doing the 2022 audit, and that would give us time this year to look for somebody for the 2023 year. I just got this email that's in your packet. As you can see, the email is dated Monday, January 30th, so that was like just a week ago. And as you can see in the email, the email's from Diane Severson, who is Deputy State Auditor, and she says, the Office of the State Auditor does not have the staffing capacity to accommodate the timing and assistance associated with Candioi County's audit. For that reason, we are declining to perform the audits of Candioi County effective for the county's years ending December 31, 2022, 23, and 24. The county will need to engage another auditor. And she also, they have also done the Candioi-Renville Community Health Board's audit. So they no longer will be doing that. So over the last few years, when I've gone to conferences, I've communicated with a representative from Clifton Larson Allen. They do a number of county audits, and that's what that handout is. That's actually a quote from Clifton Larson Allen. And again, they've kind of caught us off guard. This is kind of a, I don't know if you want to say panic mode, but I mean, we're already into February. You know, usually the year before you would have somebody on board. We don't at this moment. And Clifton Larson Allen, based on my, like I said, when I go to my conferences, they are, I would say they're probably the number one auditor for county audits in the state. So we contacted them immediately just to see if they could fit us in and all this. And yeah, as you can see from the letter I handed out, which we just received this morning, I mean, verbally on the phone last week, they pretty much committed, but this morning we received the writing, a form, actually a quote from them. So I don't know if you have any questions on that. When it comes to professional services such as an audit, it's not mandated that we put out requests for proposals. We can, if there's a firm that we feel is top of their line and we feel that their quote is reasonable, we can go ahead and sign an agreement with them. I want to point out that they do, there's a list of counties that they do. Was it a total of like 32 counties, Karen, in the state they do? So we have 87 counties and they do roughly 32. I'm sure they're going to be doing more since the state is kind of backing away from doing it. But as you can see, Meeker County has them. Swift County hires Clifton Larson Allen. Lyon County, which is Marshall, Lacaparo County. Douglas County, which is Alexandria. And there's other ones like Wadena County, Todd County. Blue Earth is Mankato, I believe. Crow Wing is Brainerd, Baxter, Brainerd area. Beltrami, Bemidji, Aitkin County. So Karen put some numbers together, and I'm going to have just Karen step up here a minute. Karen's our fiscal manager, as you know. She's the one who's heavily engaged with these auditors when they come out. And you put some numbers together, and what, for 2021 now, we spent
We
Karen-
just got in the
Karen-
last,
Karen, would you state your name for
I'm
for
sorry,
the
Karen
record?
Anderson, fiscal manager. We had just gotten the last bill from the state auditor's office, so for the 21 audit, the total we spent was $111,526. And Clifton Larson for the 22 audit is giving us a quote of $97,650. And 23 it goes up a little bit, $104,475. So they are saving us money over what the state auditor's office has been charging us.
Thank you. I'm sure that was a question every one of us had on our mind, but Commissioner Berg.
Yes, I had a question, and I think I know the answer, but just to ask the question for sure. This auditor is out of Baxter. This type of auditing is not the kind of auditing our local auditors would bid for or could do? Or we'd feel comfortable with that level?
You know, I haven't checked. I think I did years back. Like, take for example, Conway Duth, they're local. I know they do school audits, they do city audits.
Okay.
I don't know of them doing any county level audits. And it seems to me I even had checked many years ago if they were in that business, and no, they were just getting into the school audits and the city audits. So I'm just about positive I know they don't do any in the state.
I know in Meeker County, it was just in the last 2 years, they switched to Clifton Larson from the state auditor's office. They did send letters to some local firms, none of which responded.
Okay.
So we have a recommendation on, and I'm sure there's questions, we have a recommendation from the auditor's office to engage Clifton Larson Allen for our auditing.
For 2 years, yeah.
For 2 years. I'd entertain a motion to support that.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves. Do I hear a second? I will second that motion. And before we vote, we have questions.
Yeah, so my question is, because this was audited by the state, I just assume that they're checking our books. But now what happens with this audit? Is it just for us to see, or is it for
No,
the state? It gets turned
It
into?
still has to meet, the state has guidelines that the audit has to meet. So you hire a private firm, they do the audit, the state still reviews it.
Okay.
When they did our audit, when the state did our audit, of course, they didn't have to review it because they did it.
Yeah.
There's no extra charge for the state reviewing, but they do oversee all the counties. They do review audits.
Okay, so when they do that, when they see that, will they send us a bill then for that too?
The
or
state
is
does
it-
not, no,
Okay,
they would not do that.
okay.
Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark, it wasn't that many years ago that the state auditor's office was fighting a very different battle to prevent
That's correct, yeah.
such firms from competing for this business. I look at this list, and most of the counties that are listed here are outstate Minnesota counties. Can one infer that the state auditor doesn't want to mess around with rural Minnesota counties and has more of a metro focus, or what?
Yeah,
any thoughts as to what's happening here?
Commissioner Gardner, that's a possibility. Travel costs, staying over when they come out to perform the audit, they probably want to avoid some of those costs. But we've been told time and time again that it's been staff shortages. Now, I don't know if, and I think that's kind of been nationwide, hard to find workers. Everybody's short on workers. And again, that's what they've passed on to us. And we know that they're not pulling our leg because we've had many auditors come out that are no longer there anymore. So they do have a huge turnover. As far as your second part of the question, I know they do the city of St. Paul. That was always a big audit for them. The people that worked on our audit, they were always talking about they had the city of St. Paul they were doing. So I don't know if you know anything else, Karen, about about other metro cities they do, or,
I don't.
yeah. I know they always talked about the city of St. Paul. That was
That-
for the group that did our audit. That was one of their other audits, and they always talked about the city of St. Paul. So it's possible. I don't really have an answer there, I guess, but you're right. Years back, there was kind of a, I don't know if you want to say a lawsuit, or, I mean, there was tension there. They didn't want the private firms to get into it, and now they're kind of pushing us away, so.
Well, it almost sounds like some sort of mismanagement at some level there. And it's discouraging to hear from, especially from the state auditor's office, which has always been held in high regard no matter who occupied that office. And it's really disappointing to see now, especially when we get this dropped in our lap. So we really have no choice.
Did not.
Yeah, like I said, they caught us off guard. I mean, they had hinted the last couple of years, but we still felt they would be doing 2022s. And then this email, pretty much point blank, we're done.
And just, because I sit on the CHB as well, so that entity is going to have to engage this firm or another firm.
Yeah, what I'm bringing to you today is.
Separately?
Right, what I'm bringing to you today is strictly for the county's audit. But the community health, Candy Renville Community Health also uses the state, so, and the email says that they're not gonna be doing that neither, so, yes.
I just sat in on that presentation.
Okay, sure.
Back towards the end of the year.
Sure. So, and maybe I'm gonna quiz Larry. So is that something that we should include with this right away, or is it, I think so. I mean, I really didn't think that deep into it. I guess I was more focused on the county audit, but,
Mr. Chair, if I can respond.
Yes.
So currently, the state auditors does ours and the Renville, Kennewick County Board of Health now. And to be consistent with our staff and Renville staff, just to maintain that continuity.
keep the same
Keep the same.
auditor, yeah.
So,
But again, we don't have no quote for that part. This quote is strictly for the county audit.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, so do we want to proceed with approving this motion now or wait until we come back and include? Because there are other quasi-governments that also need auditing. I'm thinking of the Middle Fork Watershed. Help me out. There's
But we don't
other-
do those.
Okay, so my question is, this proposal, this quote, what audits does it include?
Just the county.
Just a county.
Just the
Just
county.
Candy County. It does not include the Candy Renville Community Health.
And the question comes up, which ones perhaps should it include in addition to the county one?
In the past, I think the Community Health Board has had their own contract with the State Auditor's Office. It's a totally separate audit. In speaking with Jenny, she thought, we talked about, could they go to another firm? Are they best to stay with us, with Clifton Larson? She thought because there are so many things that are intertwined, it may be easier if Clifton Larson did theirs also. So we were going to be contacting them about the Community Health Board.
So maybe bring that one back, Mr. Chair, as soon as you can, next board meeting for the Community Health Board. Do this once, keep it clean and make sure you have everything in process for
We
the
can
board.
correct.
If I didn't sense the urgency that I'm sensing, I would say, let's go back and redo it and include everything that needs to be included. But because of that urgency of needing to get an auditor in place.
And Mr. Chair, you were talking Jenny Lippert. You had talked to
Yes.
Jenny Lippert. Yeah, so you have communicated with
Yes.
her on that.
And our CHB meets next Tuesday, so if we can, I would assume that Jenny's asking for something along these lines for us at that meeting
Okay.
next week.
Yeah, we'll see if we can't get a number for the Health Board too.
Outstanding, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
so we don't know at this point
Next Tuesday.
if Renville County, I'm assuming they're gonna have to find somebody too. We don't know who they're
Well-
going with?
Renville, I know they do not have the state auditors. Renville,
I think they have a private firm.
Oh, they do, okay.
God, I should know who they are.
I don't know who theirs is.
All
Well,
right,
we have to see how they feel about this as well,
There's a-
since we're joined.
the motion on the floor and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, thank
You
you.
guys.
Good, thank you.
So we're gonna do, I know we're running behind, but we're gonna take a very, very short break. But Val, if you wanna do your abatement, rental properties, fire abatement first.
And I'll put the camera on.
Good morning.
Okay.
My name is Val Savor, County Assessor, and I have a fire abatement, and this fire abatement was requested by County Rental Properties LLC. Craig Flattable filed it. The building, it's a 4-unit complex that had an interior fire kind of behind Nelson International, kind of over in that area. It was internally, it had more than 50% damage, so we're requesting an abatement. And they are in the process of cleaning out the structure, and they're going to refurbish it. The abatement starts the first month after the fire, and it runs till the first of the year when I can reassess it with what value it would be with the buildings that are remaining. So this fire abatement is a request for $568, and that would be my request that I'm presenting to you.
So you heard Commissioner Gardner?
I just didn't hear where the home was located at.
The property it's right behind, it's a fourplex, and it is right behind, kind of in the Nelson International area.
Oh, okay.
Back in that area, the actual address was, and of course, they just don't. I have the address of the filer, which is not the case. It's 2420 4th Avenue Southeast.
Okay,
Is the
thank you.
address.
So I would entertain a motion on, did you have a question first?
No, I just was looking at, it was your
Also
district.
move.
So Commissioner Gardner moves to abate the property tax due to a fire. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Burke seconds. And I just want to say this is that for those that are listening, this is quite unusual. It only happens about once every other year, it seems like.
Yes.
But it is deemed that the property owner does not have use of the property and therefore the reason for the abatement.
Yes.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We will take a 3-minute break. We'll reconvene the Kennesaw County Board of Commissioners. All right, thank you for your patience again. Our next item on the agenda is a broadband update. Mark Bashan, our Kennesaw County EDC. Well, I'll let you say who you are for the record and
Sure.
who you represent.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Mark Beshan, EDC Broadband Committee Chair, here with requests from the committee for 2 additional projects, broadband projects that we want to apply for a Minnesota border-to-border grant. Provider with these 2 projects are Vibrant, otherwise known as Meeker Co-op. And these 2 projects, first project is the unserved and underserved properties in Lake Elizabeth and East Lake Lillian Township, who cover about 199 passings with fiber to the premise internet.
Mark,
Yes.
did you bring a map with you?
Just this one?
Yeah,
It's the one-
if you lay that down, Larry can turn the
Okay.
camera on. So
I think it was is it in your packet?
Yeah, but
For the
so the
others.
people on TV,
Got it. That is the rough map. So project 1, East Lake Lillian Township, Lake Elizabeth Township. Total project cost with that is about $1.9 million. We're asking for a 75% grant from the state of Minnesota. That's a low-density pilot program they're currently offering. The deadline for that grant is March 2nd. So this is an extremely quick deadline, which is why we're coming to get approvals as quickly as possible from every participant. In this case, excuse me, Vibrant will put in dollars. We've talked to Lake Elizabeth Township already. They have approved their part of the funding. We are meeting with East Lake Lillian Township tonight to request their part of the funding. And ultimately, we're asking for the county to contribute $148,125.10 towards this project from the county's ARPA funds. I don't know if you want me to stop there, if you want to do the second one at
yeah,
the same
maybe we
time.
should do them separately. So you've heard the request for, is it 190
$148,125.10.
of ARPA dollars to be used to support the grant application for coverage in this area?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this first project for Lake Elizabeth and East Lake Lillian Township.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on the,
Or I guess it wouldn't be to approve it, but to approve the dollars if we get the grant,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's.
Yes, this is completely dependent on the Minnesota border-to-border grant.
yep. Thank you for that clarification. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign?
Project 2 is Harrison Township. Same scenario here, we're covering the unserved or underserved areas. This is per the state of Minnesota and newly updated federal maps. That is about 222 passings. In this case, we're looking for a 45% grant from the state, and that is hopefully that it is a less competitive scenario. We have a better chance of getting it, and we're not requesting the full 50% in that program. So the hope is that we have a very competitive grant application in this case. The deadline is the same of March 2nd, same scenario where we're coming to each body as quickly as possible. In this case, the project is about $1.2 million. We're asking the state for 45% Vibrant contribution. We're meeting with Harrison Township on the 14th at their regular scheduled meeting to request their participation in that at the $44,400 level. At this point, we'd be asking the county to designate $251,600 from the ARPA funds for this project,
Contingent on,
contingent on the state border-to-border grant approval.
Yep. Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion as well.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on the Harrison Township application. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any questions or comments? I do have a question. So these applications would completely serve these townships that are being considered? So would East Lake Lillian, would they be fully covered, I guess is my.
Per the maps, due to the timeline on this, we don't have a lot of time to adjust for There's a lot of times this takes of figuring out if it's truly, people are truly served or not served. The majority, with East Lake Lillian and Lake Lillian and Lake Elizabeth townships, there isn't really any much question. Harrison, there's a bit of question around Diamond Lake. We have, at this point, not included the north and east side of Diamond Lake as they're indicated right now to have, they are served. If it is found that that maybe is not the case, there is a lot of density within that area that I think that we could figure out another way to cover that. But just due to the timeframes, again, of getting these engineered costs, figuring out who's gonna pay and get the approvals, we're really kind of being a little conservative in this part. But really, the biggest part is only there around Diamond Lake and whether the north and east side is truly served or not.
And it's our goal to turn those blue dots into red, or blue stars into red stars, and put some red stars
Absolutely.
in maps that don't have any. So we're making progress, although it seems a little slow at times. Thanks for all the hard work of everybody on the committee. Commissioner Dale Anderson.
If we get the grant, when is this construction going to happen?
So,
Timeline?
Yep, so the state imposes a 2-year timeline barring any unforeseen consequences. But once they're awarded the grant, it would be they would have 2 years from that point. Assumption on awarding would be this summer sometime.
Okay.
So it'd be 2 years from this summer.
Okay.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
Yeah, so we don't know if we're gonna get the grant. We're hoping we get it, and it's the same as that was applied, and we got it for Mamre, Arctander, and the 4 townships out to the west.
Correct.
So hopefully we get it done. I know there's some people, they really, excited if we can get it. Tonight, we're gonna present to East Lake Lillian Township. Sarah's gonna be there, and I'm gonna attend as well to encourage them to get this resolution going and to commit those dollars towards getting high-speed internet to those areas, so.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just a real quick question, looking at the map. The different size stars, is that significant? Is that, or?
No.
No key. I didn't
More or
think
less,
so.
I mean, the smaller stars are smaller projects, I guess.
That's what I'm saying.
It could be. I don't even like the stars, to be honest. It's a hard way to try to show what we're doing, but.
Let's go ahead and, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Let's go ahead and vote on this, and then we'll move on to the next request. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Please proceed.
And the last thing we're looking for is request a letter of support for both of these projects that we can include with our state grant application.
I'll so move.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the request for a letter of support. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks so much, guys. Did you have anything else?
2 things. One is I just want to say thank you to the council for again supporting broadband. You've been very encouraging in doing that. And second is just to let everybody know that's watching is that we are looking for letters of support for these projects and really anywhere within the county. So if you're an employer with employees in that jurisdiction or residents or anything that want to include a letter of support, we're happy to take them. You can send them to the EDC.
And what has been fairly effective in the past is if there's lake owners, associations within the boundaries of this request, they may already have a communication system set up in place, so they could reach out to their members, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. I'd like to comment that's kind of off the subject, but kudos from the board of Sarah Swedberg on her special leadership recognition. Good job.
Yep.
We're glad you're part of this.
Yep. All right. I get to turn a page here.
Yeah.
This is the first time in 10 years we have 3 pages. So, Tom Odens, Chief Deputy Auditor and Treasurer, you have a resolution to present?
I do, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Tom Odens, from Chief Deputy Auditor Treasurer, Candido County. I'm here with Resolution 2023-7, which is authorizing the sale of tax forfeited land parcel 40-075-0760, which is located at 106 5th Street South in Atwater. A couple weeks ago, I was here with the classification resolution for these tax forfeited parcels. We then sent letters to the cities and townships where these lands are located. The city of Atwater is requesting to purchase one of these tax forfeited lands. Their intent is to take down a house which is in poor condition and expand a drainage pond. You can see this here as a pond. The blue rectangle is the property that they are willing or offering to purchase. And they would like to purchase that for $1,300.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we pass Resolution 2023-7.
So Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on Resolution 2023-7. Do I?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Larry Kleino, County Administrator, here to request approval of lease 11513, addendum number 16. This is the 16-bed hospital that's over by the Y that we own, but it's leased to the state of Minnesota. And so in order for us to get paid, we have to renew the lease, and this lease is for 5 years. And it's for $10,000 a month, and it goes for 5 years for a total of $600,000. It's broken down into, as you can see in your charts, that we have a replacement reserve of per month of $1,416.67 per month, and per year that's $17,004. And with the replacement reserve, just so you know, is that each month they want us to dedicate to put so much away. So when carpet needs to be fixed, or holes in the wall need to be fixed, furniture needs to be replaced, they have a contingent fund to do that. And then the other remaining pieces of the $8,583.33, that's the operating cost, our heating costs, whatever else we have to do. So this is for 5 years. It goes from, what are the dates? It goes from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2028. So that's your approval. And then I'll tell you the other shoe that is yet to fall on this.
So I assume you want us to move on this request, so
Yes.
I'd entertain a motion. Commissioner Gardner?
I will so move the request of the administrator.
And I'll second it.
So we have Commissioner Gardner moved, Commissioner Berg seconded. Any discussion?
Just a comment, Administrator Kleinall, this has been a lot of work to this project. And I'm very glad to see you got a 5-year agreement on this, and thank you for all your time. And
So after you move on this, I'd recommend that you guys sell it as soon as you can back to the state of Minnesota.
So I just want to make a clarifying point here is over the last 6 years, we heard a lot about the Wilmer Y. When you referred to the Y, you're talking about the YMCA, not the Wilmer Y.
That's correct,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, so we have a recommendation or a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
So in addition to this addendum 16, today I was going to bring addendum 17, which I think I've been telling you for the last several months. Karen Anderson, Karen Dahlman, and myself have been working with the state of Minnesota for over 2 years to try to get some auditing errors completed. I was hoping to bring that today. My goal is to try to have it done before I'm retired. Another glitch came up on Friday or on Thursday, so we pulled it. We were at $21,000 that we were needed to make an adjustment on. Then they changed that number, and now it's $30,466, $9,000 more. But I needed to know where that adjustment was, and so I didn't feel comfortable asking for approval until we got this figured out. At the same time, I don't want to jeopardize it and walk away and having somebody come back and try to figure out how to present this and negotiate. Matter of fact, as of this weekend, I was tempted to ask them to meet us in Wright County in the middle, sit down at the table and lock the doors until we could get this negotiated out, because I don't want it to fall apart. I since, calmed down and worked with Karen Anderson and Karen Ullman, and I thought, you know what, we're close, and I think what we're gonna be asking them, we don't have a written agreement yet, but instead of exchanging cash, if we go with this extra additional amount, we'll ask for a credit. And so they'll just take off what we pay, and this way we're not exchanging those dollars. They haven't agreed to that. If the other option would be to work with our county attorney and fight and say, every year that we did these addendums, these were signed contracts. And therefore, all three parties were in agreement, there's no going back. But I don't know if the county wants to take on the state of Minnesota, and it would cost us that $9,000 in no time to make that up. So hopefully on the 21st, I can bring this to you and we can get this settled. But like I've been doing, I wanted to give you an update what's going on, where this is at. And so it's been one of those things that we're the only county in the state of Minnesota that it works with when we took over the Regional Treatment Center, that we bought it and then we leased it back to the state of Minnesota. And when we did it in 2006, it was pretty easy to get started. But as the buildings dropped off and Midwest started buying them, all that record keeping, all the square footage, this stuff never changed. And that was the problem. They would do the leases and all three parties signed off. We thought we were keeping up and we weren't. And so now they come back and say, oh, there's an error. We all three made an error. And so that's where we're at. And matter of fact, this last $9,000 error, all three parties agreed to it. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, everybody missed it. I said, well, but why does it come back to us to have to make up the difference? Well, that's where the money went, so.
So if I'm understanding you right, there is no request in the second part of it, just an opportunity to get a little off your chest, is that?
It is. I wanted to get off my chest, and I want you to be aware because if you need to, if you want me to finish this out, next board meeting.
Be ready to move.
Be ready. Otherwise, because after the 21st, someone else will have to do this. And again, I'm not saying these guys don't have the information, because they're tremendous. I'm just saying this has been a hard thing. It's been a nightmare. And when I say that it won't be like this anymore, because now we're only down to one lease. All the Midwest Technology Campus, all those buildings now are depleted, and now the state of Minnesota rents from them and not us.
So you started this by saying you have a recommendation. I haven't heard it yet. I did, but.
No, a recommendation, I'll bring it back to you, and then we accept it with the conditions that we try to get the payment worked out. I'm trying to give this information to you as information.
But I thought I heard something about sell the damn thing.
Oh, that recommendation. So because the state of Minnesota paid for, in 2006, the state of Minnesota was going to close the campus, and the county had to figure out how to do it. And so we took it over. And then in 2008, they needed to do a 16-bed to try to keep it here. And the county board at that time didn't want to lose all those state employees and didn't want to lose the service to our mental health history here. We have about 100 years. So the county decided that they would build the facility, but the state of Minnesota would pay for it, because the state of Minnesota had no means to do a payment to build a building. So we took out a loan. They paid the loan, but we had to take it out. And over the years, it's been paid for. And now it's paid for. They paid for everything themselves. But I would sell it back to them at some point for $1. And let them run it just like they do the adolescent hospital, children's hospital. But that'll be your future. I won't, that'll be up to you. And you may not have that problem anymore after this. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Did we vote? Do we need to vote?
Yeah, you did go on the 16th. Yep. The next thing I have a request from the fairgrounds. They're asking for a letter of support, and here's what the letter states. I, Larry Klein, am writing on behalf of Kennewick County Board of Commissioners. The accessibility project aims to provide ADA accessible parking, walkways, and improve wheelchair access ramps to the Kennewick County Fair community event spaces. The Kennewick County Board of Commissioners fully supports this project as the fairgrounds are located in the heart of the community and will provide improved access for all. Your funds can assist the Kennewick County Fair Board Association in providing increased accessibility to community event spaces. The fairground has become a community gathering place by providing affordable event venue options. Annually, there are more than 100 events held at the fairground that host over 45,000 people. Some of the events include weddings, proms, graduations, family reunions, 4-H shows, competitions, weekly stock car races, and the county fair. With the completion of this project, shows and competition, weekly stock car races at the county fair the Fair Board Association will be able to provide a more inclusive and accessible community gatherings location, one of the few venues in the county that can host the entire community all at one time. It goes on to say, I'm confident that this will provide a better access to the people who use it. And I got some Fair Board members here as well. And I think last year during the fair, we did hear some concerns about accessibility out at the fairgrounds and stuff, and this would really help that. And so I'm recommending to the board that you support this.
So you heard the recommendation for the administrator. I see you looking at me, Commissioner Dale Anderson.
Also moved the letter of support.
And I will second it.
So Commissioner Dale Anderson moves, Commissioner Berg seconds. Commissioner Gardner has a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have missed it, but the letter of support is going to whom, where?
Basically, the letter of support is to help us get grants for the grant.
Goes to the fairground.
Okay.
And
So
they
this
can
is,
submit
so
it.
this is something that the Fair Board can use in their fundraising?
Correct.
They're not going after something specific at this moment?
We are actually in the process right now of writing some grants. Certain ones.
Outstanding.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the question, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
By the way, we've made up 15 minutes of a half an hour late we are. You don't get it all back, just so you know.
I don't? Okay. I will be really brief. This is my last board meeting that I will be working at. And next board meeting, I will work with Kelsey to run the meeting, but I will be in the background. So I want to say my goodbyes today and just do a little wrap up here. As I wrap up my career here at Kennewick County, I just want to say it's been a great journey. There's been 14 county commissioners I've worked with, and it's been a great experience being mentored by them, learning with you, laughing with you, and maybe sometimes raising voices back and forth at each other. But it's been a great process. I also want to thank the supervisors and the department heads. Yeah, I came here in 1994 as a supervisor, so I got to work with a lot of people in a supervisor level, and of course now department heads. And the supervisors and the department heads are the glue, really, that hold everything together. A lot of people don't see the number of hours they put in. They don't see all the extra work they do to try to advocate for their staff. People don't often, sometimes their staff don't see that. They come to me and say, as an advocate, here's what we need, or here's what we can do better, or here's what can make things better. And sometimes we don't always have the funds or do the things. But they put a lot of work into advocating. But they also are coaches, they're mentors to their staff. And in my 16 years as administrator, I've had to do very little work with the department heads to get them to do their job. They're darn fine people, and they do a great job, and you just have to know that. Of course, you know our employees are the backbone of the county. They are the ones that do the day-to-day stuff. They're the ones that oftentimes are getting yelled at, or people are putting pressure on them on the day-to-day stuff. They're the ones that we put pressure on to get events done. They're the ones that we try to make sure that they're holding the funds and stuff and being accountable. But they do a great job. And, you know, I don't know every 400 and some employees personally. You try to meet them, but I'll tell you this, if you're listening, there's oftentimes you do work that you think I don't notice, but I have noticed. Another good thing about this job and stuff is the community members. I'm really proud of Kaneohe County. I think one of the things that we do very well is we work together well. The community leaders in every one of our communities work hard. If there's a challenge, we come together and we work. And a lot of communities, they say they do, but they only oftentimes do it when there's a crisis. We do it almost all the time. We get together at meetings, we get together our social events, we get together at our congregations, and we work. If there's a challenge, we step up and we meet it, and we work together to do that. When I talk to my colleagues on the state, that's not an automatic. It's not automatic that we can sit down with the cities or the townships or the chamber or other businesses and work things out. This county does that. And it's been the leadership of the county board. You maintain the dignity of the office by allowing people to work and do their jobs. And that's so important because you have a lot of great employees and a lot of great community members. In my almost 40 years now in public service, 28 here in Kaneohe County and the other in Clay County, there have been so many people that I met and so many changes in work and technology. Some of those changes have been good and some not so good. In 1983, I started working at the Juvenile Detention Center in Moorhead. We covered 27 counties. And I was working with kids that were in trouble with the law for anything from robbery to murder. And I realized at that time that I was getting and meeting with these kids too late. And so I wanted to start working with kids and families before that happened. And so I switched and I went into child protection. And so I did child protection in Clay County, along working with development disabilities, until I came here in October of 1994. Halloween. I mean, and if you think of how things have changed, I remember the first day I walked in the office, and we're down at the old Piggly Wiggly building. We had employees dressed up in costumes, and I walked in. I thought, what the heck am I walking into? It was kind of a weird event, but I learned that the spirit of Kaneohe County and our employees was in their sense of humor and their great work. My career has been full of challenges. It seems like every time I took a different position, there was a challenge. Right before Corky retired, before I became the Family Service Director, the state of Minnesota announced that they were going to sell the Regional Treatment Center or get out of the Regional Treatment Center business. We're right in this very office, or this very room, and we had several other counties here, and we met on a Saturday. Jesse Ventura was announcing that he was closing the campus, and the surrounding counties and us needed to get to work. Wayne Thompson was sitting kind of where I was sitting, and Family Service Director Berg was there, and Thompson looks at me and goes, well, you mad you step in and start working on this right now. And so I didn't even start working full-time as a Family Service Director and ended up getting involved in that. And it was a great way to learn, because they threw you in the middle of the ocean and you had to swim back to the boat. And that's basically how I see my career has been. In 2005 and 2006, I was involved with the county board when we start transferring and figuring out how we're going to do the plans for the Midwest campus, as we know it now. At that time, it was Regional Treatment Center. And so a lot of trips back and forth to the cities. The board at that time this was never done before, where the state of Minnesota took property, sold it to the county, and then the county in turn then sold it back to Midwest campus. I think that, and I'm not exaggerating, I think at one time the documents were over a foot high that the commissioners had to sign and go through, and the amount of work and hours that had to take place. In 2006, as stated, I was appointed as a county administrator. Within 3 months, then the board voted that we needed to figure out to build a 16-bed behavioral health hospital. So right away, I start looking for land and a place to build it. And of course, a lot of people didn't like wherever we want to build it, not in your backyard, you know. And so we had a lot of challenges in it. From 2008 to 2009, we had the recession that came back. And those are probably, of all the years in my career, probably were the most challenging, in that we were cutting staff's hours. We were going through, looking at programs that, trying to decide which ones were worthy and which ones were not as important as others. And we're talking about people's lives. We had positions that we had to cut and not fill. We were not mowing road ditches. We were not putting gravel. Those things all would come back. However, the board and myself had the insight. We knew when the economy was bad, it was a great time to build, because there was a lot of workers and a lot of people looking for jobs. And so at that time, we built the rescue squad and the Humane Society at the same time, using reserves and doing great planning to get that done. And it was a busy time in my career, in our careers, but it's something that shows that you can do a lot of things even in difficult times. Of course, we start doing the redesign study, and I think a lot of you have. I put a copy in your mailboxes a while back, talking about what should the county look like, what should the offices look like, how does that work? And so we started that, and it's an ongoing process now. As we got people retiring, now is a great time to look at that. But that was all started, and it's a building block process. Nothing happens overnight. Of course, we worked on Grass Lake, Lake Waconda, the grants we wrote, sitting in the Public Works building, trying to figure out who's going to do what, and it's just unreal. And so that was a great opportunity. Also worked on the CompWorth study. I remember when we started talking about it, it hadn't been done for over 40 years. And when we first started talking about it, I said, oh, just wait a few more years. It's been waiting 40 years, a few more years, but we did it and we got through it. Again, not everybody was happy with it, including us on a lot of things, but you learn how to work and adjust. But to wrap it up, there's been a lot of things been done from the landfill to working with other counties. One of the things I think I'm most proud of is that we have our regional county administrator group here in Willmar. When I started, there weren't regional groups, there weren't committees you bring together in your mindsets, and you learn how to work and you learn how to support each other. So I'm really proud of that aspect. Probably one of the things I'm most proud of is Karen. It's been a great 16 years. Couldn't have did it without her. She's seen the highs, she's seen the lows. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank her. To my wife and my family, I want to thank them for putting up with me and dealing with my stress in my job. And I promise you no longer will see me answering the phones and doing emails all the time. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. So I know we're going to celebrate a little bit with you on the 24th, 24th, down in the community room here. So I hope anybody who's ever worked with Larry or crossed swords with Larry over the years comes to wish him a farewell. And it was striking to me, Larry, that you were talking about, you were kind of going through a timeline, and you got quite a ways through it before I was included in that time. And for the rest of you, it's like he was damn near to the end before you got to it. So you've seen and done a lot, and I know that nature abhors a vacuum, and so when you think you've got, and it's the same way for me out at the store, you think you've got that hurdle, jumped, they set up another one in front of you, and it's just the nature of it. You've done a great job jumping those hurdles. I don't want to mix my metaphors here, but thank you for your years of service, and we look forward to celebrating with you in a couple of weeks. And if anybody wishes to make some comments, I'm sure Commissioner Berg here, who worked with you more years than I have, has something to say.
Really, it's interesting to listen to your stories you started to talk about. You didn't mention, though, when you first came in your office that you had a window you couldn't even see out of. So ask Larry personally about that. But I just like to share that, looking back and hearing your story of all the changes that's taken place. I mean, just major changes. The world has changed. The counties have changed. AMC has changed. They're all changing. You've had to work through all of those. I'm really proud as well of the Candido County Board of Commissioners. And Candido County, we get a lot accomplished here, a whole lot in our culture. And we have a culture that's been this way for years. And I'd just like to say that as a county administrator, Mr. Kleindahl has contributed greatly to that happening, that we have a culture that we do get things accomplished, we work together, and we problem solve together. And just really want to say thank you about that. All those years of service have been fantastic. You have a wonderful record, and we've been lucky we have had you.
Thank you.
Oh, and you mentioned, if I may, Mr. Chair, that 2 to 4 o'clock, I believe, is the open house, and there's going to be a informal, brief program at about 3 o'clock. So,
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say that, Larry, I've went in to talk to you a couple times here in the last few weeks, and just saying that I've been real anxious with you leaving, because you've been a great resource in the 2 years that I've been here. And so I'm very nervous. I'm happy that you get to move on and do other things, because just in the 2 years I've been here, things get thrown at us, and it comes pretty fast. A lot of times I think when I did my orientation for county commissioner, they said it was like trying to drink through a fire hose, and it is that way. But a lot of times I can just kind of go home sometimes and kind of escape a little bit. But with you, I come in, I'm asking you questions, and then maybe another county commissioner comes in, we're asking you questions, and you're able to answer those. And so for you, it just kind of keeps coming all the time, and you really haven't had a way to get away from it all. So I just want to thank you for your years of service.
Dale.
So I'm the newbie here, but I want to thank Larry. He was a great person to come in and learn about the county from. We sat down and had some meetings. Very interesting to learn his perspective on the county. Probably the easiest person, I guess, I've had a chance to sit down and visit with. Down to earth, and just a very simple person to get good education about what our county does. And I want to thank you for that opportunity as a new person coming on. It sure made my life simpler to understand what was really going on. And same as Dwayne, when I call and ask a crazy question that I probably know is dumb, but as a new person, you answer and make me feel a lot better. So thank you very much.
Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Larry, you used a word up here just a few moments ago, and that word was advocate. I can think of no better advocate for Candy, Ojai County than you've been. And I also want to thank you for advocating for the board members over the years. Your job is certainly not easy. Not one of us would want to have it. Thank you for guiding us through this all these years. And I suspect that I speak for all of the board members that have served in your time here. When I say well done and thank you, and now it's time to come ashore. Thank you so much.
So in light of this past 15 minutes, I'm going to,
Need an appointment.
oh, we have an appointment.
Or we haven't worked yet, though.
All right, so we'll proceed.
Dale, I'll let you, Dale's got an appointment for the Extension Office.
Yeah, so we have an opening because I became county commissioner, so we have an appointment on the extension committee. So Monica Roner decided that she would be willing to take that position, so I would move to appoint her to the extension committee.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second that. Okay.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. I'm gonna, because we've run quite a bit late today, and I don't want to take away from the words we've just heard from everybody, I'm gonna dispense with the report outs today unless you have something that is really burning, and next time you'll get two to report on. But I will remind you that we have a legislative conference coming up. We'll be leaving like the hour after we adjourn next
Right.
time. So make those report outs brief. And we'll be getting back barely on time to help Larry celebrate downstairs. So hopefully we don't have a snowstorm and have to drive on bad roads that day, so we get here on time. With that, the Kennesaw County Board of Commissioners is adjourned.